Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
The Kingsman. New movie out now on streaming. Both Hulu and HBO Max has this new movie from Matthew Vaughn, part of the Kingsman franchise universe of films. The first two films I quite enjoyed. The first film I think I liked a bit more than the second. I would have loved to revisit both of those movies. However, neither of them are available anywhere currently. I'm sure that's because this movie came out, so they pulled it, so people have to rent it or buy it. I did neither. I just watched this movie. My opinion, my memory of the second one was that I did not like it as much as the first. And this one, I would be curious to see if I like this more than the second, because there were definitely aspects of this movie I did not like. There's aspects of this movie I love. There's aspects of this movie that are the reason why I love the first one, the reason why I love the second one. This franchise, for those who are not familiar, is a very stylized take on a spy type of a movie based on a comic book, based on a graphic novel. So it has those kind of over-stylized things that Matthew Vaughn loves to do with Kick-Ass and the previous films in this franchise. So those moments were great. The fighting scenes, the action scenes, for the most part, are a lot of fun. The last third of this movie is a lot of fun. But it takes a long time to get there. The runtime on this, like so many movies, is over 2 hours long. They could have easily cut out a half hour of this movie. There is so much, because this one is it's a prequel. It's trying to set up the origins of the Kingsman kind of crew of spies, and it's also trying to weave in this story into the narrative of actual history. This one taking place during World War I. And the other part of this that I'm not a big fan of, which I probably would have loved a lot more if this was 10 years ago or if I was a kid. I'm sure there's a lot of action movies that kind of have this type of a premise. But when it comes to the reality we're living in 2022, the fact that this movie's premise relies on the idea that there's some secret organization behind the scenes planning all of the bad things that happen in the world, I'm not a big fan of that kind of conspiracy theory idea trope thing that this movie is doing. And that's why this movie takes so much time, because it's setting up this secret organization of people who are of bad guys, almost like in Austin Powers, how they're sitting around a table and you never see the villain until the end of the movie. Obviously, there's the big reveal at the end of who this master villain is, but you never see him. But it's very similar to that Austin Powers kind of a thing, of all the bad guys sitting down at like a board meeting talking about how they're going to overthrow the world. They're not trying to get $1 million, but they're trying to, take over the world. And World War I, Germany trying to invade. This one is like there's these three cousins who, one is in charge of the UK, the other one's in charge of Russia, and the third's in charge of Germany or something like that. It's just too much. It's too much. You got this kid who's Ray Fiennes' son, Conrad, and so that introduces him at the beginning, how that like Ray Fiennes and his wife are these philanthropists. They've got all this money and they're going to help these people in Africa or whatever, and shit goes down, and the mom gets got in front of the kid, and the dad is now overprotective, but the kid is still training. And it's like you see where all this stuff is going, but it takes so much time to set up all these, the whole behind the scenes stuff of this like evil villain syndicate thing is like so much. The evil bad guy is like on this goat island in the sky. It's just like this mountain that has a sheer face of the top of it. It's like a mesa. It's just flat. and there's all these goats and his little shack, and there's like a little elevator thing that brings people up. And it's just, I mean, it's interesting, you know, the kind of having the evil layer up in the sky. The goat thing is kind of like, I don't understand it. I mean, it plays into the movie a little bit, but for some reason there's a bunch of goats there. And it's just too much. It's kind of too cheesy. It takes a little while, but there are some interesting points. Obviously, the fight scenes are fun. It takes a while for the fight scenes to get in. There's this idea of there being a network of domestics, which would be like the maids and the servants that work for all these people around the world, and they're like the information hub for the Kingsman organization that doesn't quite exist yet. That's interesting to have like all the butlers and maids and things, all the people that keep the houses of all these wealthy people and politicians and stuff, having a secret network to communicate and to pass on information. That's super interesting. Some of the war, there's like this time-lapse scene of like this battle where it's like just this rolling hills of green, and then it's like these bombs start going off, and then before you know it, it's just a wasteland. That's super cool. The visuals, super cool. There's this fight scene between this guy, Rasputin, and Ralph Fiennes' character, where they go in, they're like, oh, we got to go poison this guy. And they've got like this, he's a big fan of pastries, so we're going to poison the pastries. And he's also a fan of young boys, so we're going to use Ralph Fiennes' son, Conrad, as bait for Rasputin because he's got a fetish for young boys, right? He's like an Epstein kind of a character that also likes pastries and pies and cakes. But then there's a twist in that moment where like Rasputin's like not even into the son. He wants the dad. He wants Ralph Fiennes in there. And Rasputin's like this mystic like medicine man guy who does like these Mongolian throat singing things to like channel his powers. But there's a scene where he's licking Ralph Fiennes' wound on his leg. Ralph Fiennes has a bad leg that he's had for a long time. I think is from the opening scene where the mom gets shot and he's got this wound. And you have Rasputin doing this like this Mongolian throat singing thing, and then he starts licking the wound as if performing cunnilingus on Ralph Fiennes' knee. It is weird. It is like wacky, weird, doesn't feel like, there's aspects of this movie that feel like a straight up comedy, that it feels like this is a parody of other World War I movies. Like it steps over that line of being from just stylized action to being just comical. The Many Faces is an ongoing abstract ink portrait series that I started many years ago. I release a new face every day, but go to inspireddisorder.com to check them out. So many available. But as a listener to The Ray Taylor Show, you can save 10% when you use coupon code INSPIRED when you check out. So go to inspireddisorder.com/TMF. That stands for The Many Faces. Go check them out. Browse the entire collection. And when you decide on a piece, or maybe multiple pieces, make sure you use coupon code INSPIRED when you check out, and you'll save 10%. As a big thank you for checking out my work, for collecting my work, and for listening to The Ray Taylor Show. And with that said, let's get back to the show. And this scene where Rasputin is licking the wound on Ralph Fiennes' leg as if, and the wound looks similar to a female anatomy on his leg. So when he licks it, and he's into it while Rasputin's doing it. Weird. And then there's this kind of fun fight scene that happens. Sure. That's great. And there's this whole battle between Conrad and his dad, Ralph Fiennes, about Conrad, the war is starting, and his dad, super overprotective, doesn't want him to fight in the war. Obviously, No parents want their kids to fight in the war unless they fought in the war and they're just programmed into like, yeah, rah, rah, we must support the country. But the reason why Conrad wants to do it is because he doesn't want to be considered, he doesn't want his reputation to be tarnished. People think he's a coward. So he would rather die in war than be considered a coward. It's kind of the worst kind of peer pressure. It's like, go fight in a war that will kill so many people. The people just go to die. And that's actually leads to there's a cool like nighttime fight scene, despite the fact that it's at night. I hate movies, these action movies that set their fight scenes at night. It is like, and not just at night, but like at night and then like do nothing to really like light the scene in a way where you can see what's going on. It's like so many superhero movies do it, and this one is no different. It's just this nighttime knife battle where it's like where Conrad is going there. He's going to go retrieve this message that a spy was on his way to deliver, but they just shot him dead because they didn't know. So he's going part of this like 5-person crew to go retrieve this message. So as they're going, and they have to be quiet, they're going between the two lines, the dugout, the trenches on both sides. So they're going into the middle. Meanwhile, there's this other crew from the opposing side coming in, and they both don't want to shoot because if anybody shoots, that will trigger people on both lines to just fire. And they will all be caught. So none of them want to shoot. So it ends up being, which is an interesting, like it's like one of the smartest things this movie does to set up an interesting like fight battle thing. But it's all set at night. So it's like you can see stuff, but it's not as cool as like show, if you're going to do an action scene, show the audience. Stop hiding these action scenes at night. I don't care how much it costs in CG. Like, then don't rely on CG if it has to be set at night to like save money or whatever. It's like light shots well so you can see what's going on, especially action. It's the whole point of an action scene is to see the choreography, to see the things going on. Unless it's like Jason Bourne, in which case like the fact that the camera's moving is part of the action. But that's not what this is doing. It's just poor. It's just sad. Shortcuts. Hiding what's going on. So that was all right. But the very end of this movie is kind of where most of the action takes place. Obviously, spoilers. The big interesting thing that I did not expect to happen after that knife battle scene where Conrad retrieves the message. He's the only one left. There's one guy who's injured, and he's like carrying him on his shoulders, doing the, every war movie thing where he's bringing a soldier out of the battlefield, like Forrest Gump or Platoon or all of the war movies where there's somebody, dragging back, not leaving anybody behind type of a deal. And there's a big explosion. And what ends up happening, they get blown into the trench. He has the message. And the guy doesn't believe him because he's using somebody else's name. Because he wasn't allowed to go into combat because he's Conrad, and his dad set the thing up to make sure, just like every wealthy person or person in politics, if their kid does go do something, they're not on the front lines of anything. They're doing some cushy job that's far, far away from them ever seeing combat, from them ever being in danger of losing their life. So Conrad has to switch with this other guy so he can get in the mix of stuff. And he's on this mission. He gets the message. And this other guy in the trench doesn't believe him and shoots him. And in that moment, I'm like, I have to respect this movie now. It wasn't the greatest movie. It's just like a lot of time it takes to get things going, which could have been spent, like there could have been some fun montages of like him training his son to do stuff, like, just just in preparation, because that's like, there's a little fighting montage with knives that they do, but they could have done more of that to kind of set things up and not take forever to like lay the groundwork for this. Although at the very end, it makes sense. The whole bad guy syndicate thing kind of comes to fruition at the very end of the film and makes a little bit more sense, but it just takes so much time. But when they shot Conrad, I'm like, all right, I like this movie now. Because he's like, even the actor that they get, no disrespect to the actor, but this seems like a lot of movies are doing this. And maybe he's done other stuff. I don't know. I don't recognize him. He just looks like a generic white dude. Like a guy that's in shape. He's white, British, whatever. He looks the part, whatever. But he's like, there's nothing. If there's a lineup of all these actors that they get in these movies that are just generic white people and they put them all in the lineup, I wouldn't be able to just decipher who is who. I don't know any of their names anyway, but they all look the same, just like generic white dude. So when he dies, it's like, oh, well, they killed a generic white dude. And they set it up enough to where you cared that, they killed somebody. I remember, like, I clapped. I gave the movie respect. It was like, all right, you did it. You did it, movie. You went there. I appreciate that. But the very end is really the fun part, and that all takes place on this, like, goat island in the sky. Starts off with, like, this parachute scene where Ray Fiennes has got a parachute in, and he's flying the plane, and he's got to, like, tie the yoke off so he can climb up on the thing, and things go bad. It's just, like, a scene where, like, things happen, but they go bad, so they have to improvise, and then they go bad, and then it ends up working out. There's a fun scene with the sniper rifle and a little cheese hut where it's like the whole plan is he's got to skydive onto this island in the sky so he needs to get control of the little elevator thing that goes up, little tram elevator that goes up. It's the only way in or out of this place unless you have a plane and a parachute. But that kind of goes, like, he barely gets in there. There's a giant that's running it, like this giant dude, like an actual giant that's running it. So there's a fun fight between Ray Fiennes and this giant. Meanwhile, down on the bottom floor, there's two more of the good guys, one of which is a sniper, and they're hiding in a cheese hut, and they start taking people out. And it's this great scene. Great. I mean, definitely, Matthew Vaughn knows how to do action. And he wrote the screenplay, and then also Karl Gajdusek wrote the screenplay as well. A little bit heavy on that, but who is the actor? Jimon Honsu plays Shola. He's great. He's like he's part of, like, the caretaker. He ends up being like the Merlin of the group. He's got some great action scenes in that whole trying to get to the elevator type of a thing. Join Inspired Disorder Plus today. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus to join. Membership includes members-only discounts and deals. You get access to the Ray Taylor Show completely ad-free, as well as bonus episodes. You get access to the complete live painting archive. You also get access to every single podcast ever produced by Inspired Disorder, hosted by Ray Taylor. You get access to Ray Taylor's personal blog, as well as the opportunity to ask me any questions. So if you want to start a podcast, you're into art, ask me anything. And so many more things are being added every day to Inspired Disorder Plus. So sign up today, become a member, head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus and become an Inspired Disorder Plus member today. So that stuff's good, despite the fact that the actual reveal in those moments, right, which obviously this movie is like, we never see the big bad guy. We never see the Dr. Evil guy who's in charge of these villain meetings. We never see him. So obviously there's going to be a big reveal. There's going to be a moment in this movie where he's going to be standing in the shadow and he's going to step into the light, or he's going to turn around and show his face, or he's going to bring a cloak up off over his face, and we're going to see who it is. And in that moment, it's going to be, oh my God, it was that guy all along. That moment is just building, obviously, because every time we cut into with him and him meeting with the other bad guys, it's very noticeable that you never see his face. So when the moment happens, when he reveals who the bad guy is, it is by far the most underwhelming moment of any bad guy reveal in a movie. Like, he was some side character that I guess he was in. Like, I didn't even remember this. Like, it felt like they were showing scenes that weren't even in the movie. Of like, oh, there was this guy, the side character, that if you were paying attention, you probably would have been able to know that it was going to be him. And maybe. But for me, no. Super, like, okay. Okay, that's the bad guy. What a great reveal. Thanks for building that up the whole time. It was just like a nobody character that just happened to be in a few scenes, but whatever. Despite that fact, there are still some epic scenes in that last third of the movie. There's this point of view, like from the sword. There's like a little sword fight, and there's from like the point of view of the sword, which is an amazing, like, I don't think I've seen a sword fight where the camera looks like it's mounted on the handle of the sword, just looking towards the tip, and then, seeing it clash with the other sword. That was really cool. There's a scene where a grenade is thrown, and Ralph Fiennes' character has to grab a shield, and he gets exploded through a wall, and the camera kind of follows him as he blasts through the wall. That was kind of cool. His fight with the giant was pretty cool. So there's cool moments. I really enjoyed, like, that last third. I really enjoyed the fight with Rasputin was kind of fun, even though that scene was like crazy weird. It's just like a scene from a movie that's not this movie, but still fun. Still fun. Overall, it wasn't horrible. The final, there's an after credit scene of this movie where, like, Stalin was a big aspect of him, like, taking over as, like, the extreme left, the extreme, like, liberal side of things would be Stalin, socialist side, evil side. And then at the end, it's like, oh, our left is strong, but our right needs to be strengthened. And then we introduce this new character that's supposed to be the extremist leader of the right. And of course, if you know history at all, he introduces Adolf Hitler, which the guy playing Adolf Hitler doesn't have the Hitler mustache. Doesn't really look like Hitler at all. Like, if he was hired to go to a birthday party as Hitler, the people hired him would want their money back, because aside from being a thin white guy, he doesn't really, and having a German accent, nothing looks like at all has the Hitler vibe to him whatsoever. But it makes sense. And, like, I would kind of, like, if they did a World War II version of this movie, it seems like that's what the next one's going to be, I'm interested. I mean, World War II, a little bit more of an interesting world war than World War I. The battle tactics and things like that, a little bit more interesting. But the thing I love about these movies is the spy aspect of it. Like, they turned a spy movie into a mediocre war movie. And it just wasn't, I don't know. It was like, if it didn't have the cool fight scene, if the ending of this movie wasn't as cool as it was, then I would not have liked this movie. But it takes a while to get to the good moments. So not absolutely horrible, but also not like mind-blowing. Oh, this is great. I can't wait for the next one. I still am excited for the next one, but it almost makes me want to rewatch the first two and see if maybe leading up to this one it fits better. Like it makes more sense if I, maybe just I didn't grasp the vibe of Matthew Vaughn. It's been a while. Because that can happen. Because I'm not a big, like, for an example, I'm not a big Rob Zombie fan of his movies necessarily, but I did a thing where I watched all of his movies and ranked all of his movies on a top 5 last year at some point. And when you watch all of the movies of a director, whether you like him or not, you understand their sensibility in telling a story, their visual style, their storytelling style, and it can help improve watching their stuff, knowing kind of where they're coming from, knowing their voice. So maybe if I had rewatched those, I would have appreciated this better. I just think it was too long. They could have cut some stuff out. Definitely some interesting stuff with like the whole network of, of domestics. That was way more interesting than the table, the table of like enemies of these different countries. But whatever. It's like there's definitely positives and negatives. It's very, because of that unbalanced middle range, like a halfway thumbs up, thumbs down kind of a deal. But check it out if you want. It's everywhere. The Kingsman. New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. And follow the show on Instagram at Ray Taylor Show. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.